here from Scuderia Audio, and today we're going to go over something new for the 360s and 430s. It's the 6.5-inch version of Focal's Flax Series Components speaker set. Now, I've sold dozens of the 5.25-inch set, and although they sound fantastic, I gotta tell you, these monster 6.5s sound 10 times better. They have significantly more mid-bass, it gives you significantly more sound pressure, and it really fills out the sound stage inside the car. So, I've been hesitant to sell the 6.5-inch kit because I've always taken pride in the fact that all of the Scuderia audio products require no more cutting or drilling than Ferrari would implement. I throw that little disclaimer in there because in some of the models of cars, when you install my subwoofer, you'll have to drill 2 holes in the engine access panel. Well, when any 360s or 430s were ordered from the factory with the hi-fi stereo option, Ferrari drilled 2 similar holes in the same exact location in the engine access panel so they can install 2 riv nuts. And then the subwoofer just bolts right into the riv nuts. Well, if you think about it, although these 6.5s require a little more cutting and a little more drilling, it still is nothing that Ferrari hasn't already done. Let me show you a little drawing I made here. Forgive me, I'm definitely not an artist. When you take the door card off the door on a 360, you can see the sheet metal, right? And this is my attempt to draw the 2 brackets that rise up with bolts on them so that you can install the door card. This is a large nut and washer assembly for adjusting the windows. And then this is where the sheet metal ends, and this is just all open space, right? I mean, the windows back there, the framework, the motor. Well, I mean, you can see Ferrari cuts out a little crescent moon shaped area out of the sheet metal to allow the magnet for the OEM mid-range to clear the door so you can mount the speaker. Well, to get this Focal 6.5-inch in there, because the magnet is considerably larger, all you have to do is just cut out just a little sliver more of the material out of the sheet metal. And it turns out you don't have to cut in any rivets, so you don't have to worry about reducing the structural integrity of the door. The trick is knowing just how much to cut, right? Because obviously you don't want to cut any more than you absolutely have to. So what I did was, I created a fixture that will get shipped in your kit to show you exactly how much more to cut. I mean, it kind of looks like a weird shape, but what you do, and we'll go through this when we go out into the shop. You take this fixture and you just lay it against the door, right? And then I have these cutouts so it'll fit right over these risers and over this hardware assembly. And then you just get your finger and you put it against the door so you can line up this edge. You line up this edge with the top, and then you take your other finger and you line it up on the bottom. You just tape it in place, and then you take a marker and you just trace using this pattern from this arrow, trace down to this arrow, and then when you take this off, you have this line that'll show you exactly how much to cut. And we'll go over how to cut this in detail a little bit later when we go to the shop. Now, the only other thing you have to do is you have to drill 3 small holes in the door card so that you can hold the mid-range onto the door card, right? I mean, Ferrari already does this. They've drilled 3 holes which hold the little clips, and you put the screw through the clip, and that's what holds the speaker in place. Well, you just have to drill 3 more holes in a slightly different place, And so what I've done is I created another fixture that I'll include in the kit that you can line up in that pocketed area on the door card, and all you have to do is just put a pencil in there and mark where the holes go, drill the 3 1/8-inch holes, install the clips, and pop the mid-range in there, and that's about it. So we'll go out to the shop, do some install work, then we'll come back in here, and then I'll go over how you would install the 6.5 in a 430. Okay, well, let's go play with the car. Okay, so with the door open and this barrier peeled back a little bit, you get a piece of tape and kind of tape it back here in place. Right, so this is the big open area in your door, and the factory cuts out a little crescent moon here to allow the magnet of the mid-range to clear and mount inside the door. Well, to get the Focal 6.5-inch mid-range to fit, you just have to cut a little more out, right? You come close to a couple of rivets, but you actually don't cut into the rivets, so you don't reduce the integrity or the strength of the actual door. So you get your fixture and you put it in place. See if I can do this without getting in the way too much. And you know, you just want to take your finger and you can feel it. You can align the edge of the door with this side and just align the edge of the door with this side. And when you get it where you want it, you hold it and then you just tape it into place. It's, you know, really not rocket science. Let's see, yeah, that's even. You tape it there. And then you take a pencil, or what's really great are these silver Sharpies, because the silver really contrasts against the black. And then you just start tracing from the first arrow. You just trace, and of course mine's already done. You trace, 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 a line until you get to the second arrow, and then take it off, and you have a nice line to follow. Now give me a second, I'm going to go get a tool and try to give you a couple tips on how to actually cut this out. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. This is one of those little Dremel bits that's actually a little cutoff wheel. It works really great for this. Now what you don't want to do is get in there with a jigsaw, a sawzall, or any kind of reciprocating tool, because you don't want anything to be going, you know, in and out, in and out, in and out. You'll reduce the structural integrity of this. You could screw something up. So you want to just take your time and just grind down on it with this little cutoff wheel. So put the cutoff wheel on there. I'm not going to fire this up, but what you want to do is you want to get your hand like in the middle of where you want to cut, and then just kind of pivot your hand. If you pivot your hand, see, you'll end up cutting the same path. It'll be a radius. So you just take your time and you keep doing that until you get all the way through, or almost all the way through, and then go do the same thing right here. And then down here, because the radiuses are a little bit different, right? You might want to, for the tighter radiuses, you want to hold up closer to the actual bit, so you can make a tighter radius. And then once you get most of it, you know, you can get in there and take your time and cut out the last remaining parts. Now, from right about here to right about here, there's 2 layers of metal and rivets holding it together, right? So as long as you don't touch the rivets, you're fine. The pattern, it doesn't allow for touching the rivets, but I'm just telling you this so you'll know that it's going to take a bit longer to cut through those 2 pieces as it is the rest of it just to cut through one. It actually goes pretty fast except for this one area, so just take your time and cut through it. Now, when you're finished, it's going to be really sharp. So what you can do is get one of these little barrel sander wheels. And this works really great. So you just put the little barrel on there, you know, and then you just happily go off and smooth out inside, and stay away from the cables. Smooth out the inside and smooth out the outside, and make a little radius where you need to, and make it so that it's very, very smooth to the touch. You don't want to cut yourself. You don't want your mechanic to cut himself. And then what you can do, what I did, it makes it nice, is just mask off this area and put like a rag or something in here, and then just hit that with some trim black, which is basically, or even black primer, black semi-gloss primer, and just touch that up. And once you do that, I mean, nobody would even be able to tell that that was modified unless they really knew what they were looking at. Okay, so next up we're going to look at the door card. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing before we get out of this area that might be useful to show you is the passive crossover, right? It's a lot bigger for the 6.5-inch mid-range than the 5 1/4-inch mid-range, so it won't really fit on the inside of the door card very easily. So what you can do, what I did was, let me get this little raincoat thing, put it back there. You see, I stuck it right here on the inside of the door, near the front. There's not going to be a lot of forces on it because it's not near the back of the door. Same kind of thing with the 5 1/4-inch crossover network. And so it's held on by that big, thick, industrial strength Velcro that you saw in the video to install the 5 1/4-inch mid-ranges. So I got two big old strips of that, and I tell you, once you stick it on there, boy, it takes an act of Congress to pull it off, so it's not coming off. However, just for added measure, I cut about a 10-inch long by 1.5-inch wide strip of Dynamat, and I put it over the crossover and down and against the inside of the door, which is fully Dynamated. And then I got a little piece to hold that down. Maybe a little overkill, but I guarantee you that thing is going nowhere. And another trick is you get a Ziploc sandwich bag and you cut the Ziploc, the Ziploc part itself off the top. Then you shroud this crossover by this bag, by putting it upside down, you see? So it's this little baggie and it's sealed. It's open right here, so you can get to the wires and you can get to the connectors and it can get air. But when you're washing your car, or if it's raining, if any water comes down from the top, it can't get in there because this whole thing is shrouded with this plastic except for the bottom. So I highly recommend doing that. It just takes a couple minutes to do that. Okay, now onto the door card. Okay, so here's one of the door cards, and I'm gonna zoom in here so we can look at the mid-range. Again, I'll try to keep out of the way as much as possible, but just pretend that the door card is on the door. You can either do it that way or take the door card off, like as you see here. So, assuming that you don't have the OEM mid-range out of the door card yet, you know, there's the 3 Phillips screws that hold it in there. Okay, so we take him out of there, and you know, there's 3 of these little clips, metal clips, and then they clip on this inner ring part of the door card, and there's holes where each one of these goes. Obviously the screw goes through the hole. However, you'll see that there's this little, probably 7/8 of an inch wide area where Ferrari has cut down a little pocket here, right? Because the little clip has a thickness and it's going to stick up, and you don't want it to be too far above this mounting surface, so they just ground a little channel, a little pocket down there, so this would be kind of even. All right, so just put your finger in the back and you can clip those, or I'm sorry, you can unpop those little clips off, so do that. And you can see all three of those have that channel. So I have this other little fixture, right? Because this doesn't go all the way, you'll see that it kind of stops there and it stops right there, kind of even with how this stops. So I have this fixture here that you can put in there, and it will show you where you need to drill 3 little 1/8" holes to mount the Focal 6.5" Flax mid-range. Okay, so you just put this fixture in there, right? Make sure this little flat part is lined up with this flat part, and then that part will line up with that flat part. And then you get your pencil and you just make 3 little marks through those holes. Now, if you want to do it the way Ferrari does it, and I recommend you do that, then after you drill your 1/8" holes, of course mine's already done, then you're going to want to make a little channel as well. So you just, you know, again, not rocket science, you just eyeball it, you look at the existing channels, and then where you drilled your holes, you just make marks on either side. And you know, when you're, by the way, when you're drilling your holes, just use common sense. You know, drill them the same distance away from the edge that the OEM holes are. The OEM holes are bigger, but just use some common sense there. So anyway, you make some marks, and then you get back to your little Dremel, and you know how they have that real gnarly cutter that's flat on the top, but it still has some teeth on the top. Well, that's what I used, and you just take your time and you just slowly and lightly just grind in that area inside of your lines and all the way up to the edge. And you know, you can get fancy and get a calipers. I got a calipers, and I measured, you know, what the OEM thickness was in the pocket, and then I kept measuring mine. I'd grind a little bit and then I'd measure it, and eventually you'll get 3 similar pockets. So once you do that, then you just put these little clips on your new holes, and one last thing, this is optional, but I highly recommend you do this. Also in my kit, I provide a piece of Dynamat that's the same shape as the fixture. So you want to take the adhesive off the back. We're not going to do that here, but you take the adhesive off the back, and then you stick this right on there, and it makes a nice little gasket that will not only hold everything in place a little better, but it will prevent the speaker from vibrating when you turn the music up loud. In fact, the entire inside of this door card is dynamated, and this little mounting surface right on the edge is dynamatic. Dynamating is just fantastic stuff.
So it's a cheap way of making your stereo sound a lot better, and it eliminates a lot of the road noise when your car's going down the road. So anyway, you put this little Dynamat gasket in there, okay, and once that's stuck in there, then you can take your Focal mid-range, and then you take the same three screws, right, from your OEM mid-range. Then you get the Focal speaker in there. Again, hopefully I'm not covering up too much. Right, and then you put those in there, and the slots on the mid-range are very wide, so you can adjust this, and get the Focal logo straight and all that, even though you really won't see it. But then you just cinch these down, okay, and voila, your mid-range is in there. And it fits great. Now, when I was doing R&D for this, I tried to get the speaker grill ring. Remember, with these kits, you install the ring underneath the mid-range, and then when you put the mid-range on, there's this little channel that's outside of the mid-range on the speaker grill ring, and you drop the grill in, and the edge of the grill fits into the groove or the channel in the ring. Well, I'm telling you, you can't get that grill ring in there, but you really don't need to, because it turns out that once you bolt the speaker in there, there's just enough room between the outside of the speaker and this channel to mount the grill. And when you have this Dynamat in there, it's great because you put it in there and it just kind of sinks in to that Dynamat rubberized material, and it doesn't go anywhere. Now, when you get your kit, I have a jig, a template. I'll have already precision ground, if you can see this, a little bit off the top there, so that when you put this in, it just fits in there perfectly. And you won't see this part. I'll show you in a minute because of the gray trim piece. So you just put that into place, and then let's see if I can show you about that gray trim piece without knocking everything over. So when you finally bolt your gray trim piece into place, there's that lip. So when you put it all together, I mean, it just looks perfect. You don't see the Focal emblem, but so what? It basically still looks like it's made for it, and the little lip on this silver piece pushes down gently on this grill right into that rubberized Dynamat, and it holds it in there great. It doesn't move, it doesn't vibrate or anything. And that's about it. Okay, now to mount the 6.5 in the 430, it couldn't be easier. Unlike the 5 1/4 inch driver that required the bracket that you had to sandwich between the speaker and the Ferrari speaker bracket, this Focal 6.5 literally drops right in.
I mean, the 4 bolt holes line up perfectly. So all you have to do is take the 4 small machine screws and nuts provided in your kit and just bolt the mid-range right to the plate. Done. So in conclusion, I can say that for the folks who cannot install a subwoofer in their car for some reason, these 6.5s are a must because they're going to at least give you some bass. And for the folks that already have the subwoofer or are considering purchasing the subwoofer, I can tell you that this 6.5-inch kit is definitely going to give you more of what you're looking for, which is more bass, more sound pressure, and a better sound stage inside the car. Okay, well that's about it. So have a great day!